You're listening to the Courageous Pivot podcast. This is a space where transformation begins and possibilities unfold from the heart. Whether you're standing at a crossroads or seeking clarity on when to trust your deepest instincts and take that life-changing leap, you're in exactly the right place. Get ready to unlock the courage, wisdom, and passion to turn challenge into opportunity. Your journey starts now. Welcome back once again to the Courageous Pivot podcast. I'm your host, Meghan Telpner, and I am so happy you're coming on back for more. At this point, we've also started sharing a lot of the interviews I've been having with friends, colleagues, acquaintances, people that I want you to know. And time and again, I have been absolutely delighted in how easy it is for them to both share their stories, but how much they align with some of the topics I'm covering in these solo episodes. The whole purpose and intention was to be able to dive into ideas and then have actual people that are not me living and embodying what I'm sharing. And so far, those boxes are being checked, and these people have been so generous with their time and in sharing their stories. So thank you for showing up to listen. If you've been following along on this journey, these ideas are building on each other. So it's great to start at the beginning and catch up, or of course, you can always choose the topics you love most. But ultimately, we've been diving deep into what it really means to make courageous pivots. Those moments when your heart calls you to realign with who you're becoming, even for the areas of life that look successful from the outside or align with your outdated standards of success. Now, before recording this episode, I had taken my son to an appointment and then rushed in here to record an interview, and I had some time to spare, so I flipped open a journal of mine, as has become a habit, to see what wisdom I once felt pertinent to jot down. And what I opened today was a page with this statement highlighted. What got you here won't be what gets you to the next point. And, well, isn't that the truth? And doesn't that just align perfectly with today's topic? Today, we're exploring something that might be the most challenging aspect of any pivot, the often messy process of letting go. Specifically, letting go of what you've built, what you've invested in, what you've poured your heart and soul into, and of course, no matter the kind of pivot, there have been countless hours dedicated to making it, whatever it is, actually work. This is about those moments when you realize that the very thing you've worked so hard to build, your business, your career, your relationship, your lifestyle, might actually be the thing that's keeping you from moving forward with what truly aligns for you now and the trajectory you know that is possible for your life. What makes this so difficult? Well, as I write and record this, I've begun marinating and percolating, always with the food metaphors, on why I am clinging to my blog. This was something I began in 2008. There is now an archive of more than 1,000 posts, only the best of the best. We have deleted loads, but it's what it remains of culinarynutrition.com and my personal blog from the last 15, 17 years. And I keep asking myself, what am I hanging on to and why? And it goes beyond the fact that I most often am searching for my own recipes that are online. So today I want to dive in on the challenge of letting go. The first obvious question, why is it so hard? Well, because sometimes it still feels like it serves a purpose. Sometimes it's not about letting go of something that's broken or failing, which makes it even more difficult. It may also not quite be bad enough or hard enough. As it relates to a courageous pivot, it becomes more about having the strength and inner knowing to release something that's mostly working or what looks successful from the outside because, well, your heart is whispering that there's something more aligned waiting for you. It's taking that fateful step to actually choose to rock the boat, which could ultimately leave it turned upside down. Ultimately, it comes down to asking, how could we possibly be unhappy if we're living in the world we created? It could be a job we strived for, a business we built, a marriage that we thought was everything we wanted. Let's begin this conversation with an idea that might sound contradictory. What if our greatest successes start to feel more like prisons, where it was all meant for us to feel free and instead we feel stifled, suffocated, and suppressed within it? Now, when I look back at my own journey with the Academy of Culinary Nutrition, the business I spent 15 years building, I can see how my attachments to what I'd created actually started limiting my growth long before I was ready to admit it. The business was successful by every conventional metric. We had thousands of students across 80 countries. We were profitable. We had a team I adored. The impact was real and meaningful. Renata, who was a guest on an upcoming episode, did a card reading for me in 2021. In the reading, she declared that I would never be able to move on to what was calling me unless I let go and moved on from what I was currently doing. I already knew this in my heart, and I know that I frowned and was like, I don't want to. At the time, this was a terrifying and impossible prospect. Business had never been better. But somewhere along the way, I started feeling like I was an employee in a job I would never have applied for. The very thing that had once been my greatest expression of freedom had become, in subtle ways, a bit of a prison. Is that too dramatic sounding? It's fine. It's fine to be dramatic once in a while. You get it. I know you are experiencing this too in some areas of your life. We always are to some extent, which is often why so many of us are feeling so restless right now. We have more choice and more freedom than ever before, and yet so many of us feel a bit trapped. And here's the tricky part. It can all still look good from the outside. For me, it was good from the inside and the outside. Even when I knew I needed out, I still felt proud of what we'd built. I still do, very much. But it was internally that I was changing. My values were shifting. What I wanted to do next wasn't necessarily compatible with what I'd already created. This is what I refer to when I talk about this invisible prison of our own success. In my course, Rise and Shine, I talk about this in more detail, and I show an image of a heart wrapped up in wires. That's what it can feel like, and we're the ones who tighten those wires. We become so invested in maintaining what we've built that we lose sight of who we're becoming, who we are now. There's a concept in behavioral economics called the sunk cost fallacy, and understanding it can be absolutely liberating when you're considering a courageous pivot. I can't actually believe that we are in episode 13 and I'm only now bringing up the essential book Quit by Annie Duke. I read this book in the summer of 2023 after I had quit. I truly believe that if I had read it a year before, I would have stuck to my original timeline. I am campaigning to get Annie to agree to be on the show, but so far I've been denied. Once again, facing the humbling reality of starting something from the beginning with no track record to prove the success that might be coming, might not be. Until we have her on, I'm going to do my best to explain how she explains sunk cost fallacy, as it was the best illustration I'd ever come across. Once you understand this concept, you'll never look at your decisions the same way again. You listening? You ready? In short, we have this deeply ingrained tendency to continue investing in something, whether it's time, money, energy, or an emotional investment, simply because we've already put so much into it already, even when continuing clearly isn't serving us anymore. The fallacy is thinking that our past investments should influence our future decisions. But here's the thing that Duke makes crystal clear. Those investments, they're already gone. They're sunk, as the case may be. The only question that actually matters is this. What's the best choice moving forward from where you are right now? Duke uses a powerful example that really drives this home. Imagine you've invested 2 years and significant money into a degree program, but you realize it's not the right path for you. The sunk cost fallacy would have you thinking, I can't quit now, I've already invested too much. But Duke argues that those 2 years are already spent whether you continue or not. The real question is, what's the best use of your next 2 years? The same goes for that relationship that's dragged on for 10 years, but that you know isn't right. When resources were scarce, persistence often meant survival. But in our modern world, this same instinct can keep us trapped in situations that are draining our life force, and that doesn't benefit anyone. This is the part that I found most profound. In the book, Duke explains that we often choose to stay on a path where we are 100% certain we'll be unhappy, rather than taking a new path where we might be unhappy, but also might discover something extraordinary. Think about that for a moment. We choose the certainty of our current dissatisfaction over the uncertainty of potential fulfillment. Why? because we can quantify what we're giving up, what we may lose, but we cannot quantify what we might gain. That's that unknown we have to learn to trust. Duke's book Quit offers up these questions to ponder. What would I choose today if I were starting fresh? Am I holding on to this because it's working for me now, or because of what I've already put into it? And the third, what would become possible if I weren't managing what I've already created? This isn't about becoming reckless or giving up when it gets hard, but about learning to distinguish between persistence that serves growth and persistence that serves ego. Remember, the ego likes what it already knows. As Sean Croxton put it in episode 7, the brain wants to burn the minimal number of calories. All of these things will work to keep us in the familiar stuckness, that old immunity to change. This is about recognizing when holding on has become a habit rather than a choice. I used to have this quote that I often would use in presentations. It was attributed to John Lennon, but I don't know if it was actually him. The time you wasted was not wasted. Whether it's a business you walk away from, or a marriage that has no viable path forward, or simply a project or approach to a problem, your past investments aren't wasted if they taught you something valuable or led you to where you need to be next. When people used to take my biz rocking course and realize that from that course, they actually do not want to start their own businesses, that wasn't a waste of time or money. That was a deeply valuable, low-risk learning experience. To go ahead and start a business just because you took a course designed to guide you how to do so when you realize you don't actually want to do it would be absolutely foolish. Sometimes, the very thing you built becomes the foundation for something even more aligned. Not the thing itself, but the wisdom, skills, and clarity you gain from building it. You know those posters you find in high school guidance counselor offices? They're like a beautiful landscape or a mountain, and it says the process is the outcome, or the journey is the lesson. I don't know. You know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about here. The idea that even if you're along the path of a goal, what you learn along the way, even if you never reach that goal, was not time you wasted. You were learning, you were experiencing, you were growing. That alone is enough. Understanding the sunk cost fallacy doesn't make letting go easy, but it does make it clearer. And sometimes clarity is all we need to finally give ourselves permission to begin again, as humbling as that may be, as I'm learning in the process of building this podcast. When I was sitting with the decision to scale down my business, I could calculate exactly what I was releasing. The revenue, the team, the identity, the 15 years of work. What I couldn't calculate was the spaciousness I'd feel, the creativity that would return, the joy I'd rediscover in simpler things, the new projects that would emerge from that space, the number of times I've been able to give emphatic yeses, where before I would have had to give no's just because I was so stretched for time. The reality is that the stories we tell ourselves are often full of lies that keep us comfortable. One of the most powerful things about interviewing guests for this podcast has been hearing the stories we tell ourselves about why we can't let go. When I spoke with Angela de la Agua about her move from LA to the Joshua Tree Desert, she shared how she'd been getting laid off from jobs repeatedly, jobs she didn't even want. Her attachment to the familiar was keeping her in situations that clearly weren't aligned, simply because starting over felt too risky or just didn't know where to start. Kristen Nagel shared how leaving her 14-year nursing career meant releasing not just a job, but an entire belief system, an entire way of seeing herself in the world. The sunk cost wasn't just her education and experience, it was her fundamental understanding of reality. We often frame letting go as loss, and it might be, but can also be a powerful liberation. I've touched on this already, but I want to take a moment to go deeper into the unknown versus the uncomfortable known. We have an incredible tolerance for discomfort when it's familiar discomfort. We'll stay in jobs that drain us for years. We'll maintain relationships that no longer nourish us. We'll keep running businesses that feel heavy simply because we know how to navigate that particular kind of suffering. But ask us to step into the unknown, even if that unknown holds the possibility of joy, alignment, fulfillment, even greater success by metrics that are more aligned with who we are today. But suddenly we become risk-averse. This is what Annie Duke calls choosing the certain unhappiness over the uncertain possibility. I'm going to ask you, my dear listener, to think of a decision that is weighing on you, big or micro pivot style small. Once you've got it in your mind, this is the question I want to ask. How will you feel in 5 years if nothing changes? You stay the path you're on, comfortable in the knowable discomfort. Now the follow-up question, if you take the leap, micro or macro pivot, how might you feel in 5 years from now? It's possible that the answer that comes in is that you have no idea. You have no idea how it may steer you over the next 5 years. It's that 2% shift you can make in the rudder over time. It feels small, but it completely shifts where you end up. What if not knowing wasn't scary anymore? What if it was exciting? What if we thought of it as an adventure? We've done hard things in the past. We know we can do them again in the future. There's a certain amount of trust you have to put into this process around what you can know versus what you cannot know, what you can never know. Here's something every guest I've interviewed has in common. None of them knew what was waiting for them on the other side of their pivot, and I include myself in this too. The pattern is clear. We can only ever know what we're leaving behind. We can never know for certain what we'll gain. And this is actually the most beautiful part of a courageous pivot. The magic lies precisely in what we cannot see, cannot plan for, and cannot control. And as I continue to share conversations in this series, another pattern has emerged. There are unknowable gifts hidden in the release, a relaxing into it, a certain grace. The Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron talks about this beautifully when she says that letting go is not about getting rid of things, but about loosening our grip. It's about holding our creations lightly enough that we can see when they're no longer serving our highest good. So how do you actually navigate letting go of something you've built? How do you know when it's time? How do you move through the grief and uncertainty? First, get honest about the difference between what you've built and who you're becoming. Sometimes these align beautifully, and sometimes they don't. Neither is wrong, but pretending they align when they don't will drain your life force. Ask yourself, if I knew I couldn't fail, what would I choose? This question helps bypass the sunk cost fallacy and connect you to your true desires. Notice the stories you're telling yourself about why you can't let go. Are they based on fear or on truth? Are you protecting something that actually needs your protection, or are you clinging to comfort? Consider this. What if the 15 years you spent building something weren't preparation for continuing that thing, but preparation for creating something even more aligned? This is when letting go becomes sacred, when it comes from love rather than fear, from gratitude rather than resentment. Remember, it's just loosening the grip. When you courageously let go of what's no longer aligned, you give permission to everyone around you to do the same. Your willingness to let go of what's no longer serving you ripples out in ways you may never fully see. You become proof that people can change, that it's never too late to realign, that success can be redefined. I personally was so shocked when I made my decision and announced it publicly. I don't think I'd ever had more requests to be on other people's podcasts. It was revolutionary for so many people that I would just quietly close the doors, sunset this thing I'd been on a driven path to build, and choose alignment. Before we close, I want to leave you with some questions that might help you explore your own relationship with letting go. And I will post these in the show notes on the Substack, so please head over there if you want to write them down or just respond to them in the comments. Both are welcome. What are you holding on to, not because it serves you, but because you've invested so much into it? If you knew you could take all your wisdom and experience with you, what would you be willing to release? And what would become possible if you weren't managing what you've already built? What are you afraid people will think if you let go of something that looks successful from the outside? These aren't easy questions. They're meant to be a little bit uncomfortable, because sometimes discomfort is the first sign that we're approaching something that is very true. When we cling to what was, we limit ourselves to the potential we could see when we built it. But when we're willing to let go, we open ourselves to potential we can't even imagine yet. Your willingness to let go of what no longer serves you isn't failure. It's the most courageous thing you can do because it means you trust yourself enough to begin again. It means you trust life enough to provide what you need. It means you trust your heart enough to follow it into the unknown. I have a personal invitation for you. As we close today's episode, I want to offer you a gentle invitation. Not to let go of anything specific, but to explore your relationship with what you're holding on to. This week, notice what you're gripping tightly. Maybe it's a project, a role, an identity, a way of doing things. Just notice without judgment. Ask yourself, am I holding this because it serves me or because I've invested so much in it? And if the answer is investment rather than alignment, get curious about what might be possible if you loosened your grip, even just a little. I want to thank you for being here with me today. If this episode resonated with you, I'd be grateful if you shared it with someone who might need to hear these words. For full show notes and resources, you can visit courageouspivot.com, or best of all, find me and subscribe on Substack, where you'll get an email when a new episode drops, as well as the in-between writings. I'd love a comment over there too, just so I know who you are. And remember, your willingness to let go of what's no longer aligned isn't just about your own freedom. It's about giving everyone around you permission to live more authentically too. Until next time, keep listening to your heart, trust the process of release and renewal, and know that your courage to let go creates space for magic you can't yet imagine. I will see you next time on The Courageous Pivot. Have a beautiful rest of your day.